All right. We've got a couple more, but let's, I think, dive back into this interview, or else we're just going to be here talking to other people all night.
That was
Fair
so
enough.
fun, though. So
Yeah, we've
exciting.
got plenty more and a couple of open lines. Actually, now that we're all digital, I think we have infinite or sufficiently infinite lines. We'll work it out. But in any case, I definitely appreciate you sharing your story with us. And as a therapist who works with a lot of queer folks, I certainly see the need. But I'm
Mm.
curious if you have any statistics or data, or if you've really seen what sort of the larger impact of some of these things has been.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really unfortunate, it's a really systemic thing. And, when we have people who are LGBTQ, they come out to their families, they have way higher, and they're not accepting, they have way higher chances of attempting suicide, of depression, of being homeless. There's all of these really, really sad statistics for LGBTQ people. And it's not that we're more prone to diseases or we're more prone to be homeless. Like, it's the fact that we live in this place where we don't have access to healthcare, we don't have the right resources, we're not taught how to have healthy sex. The therapists that we're trying to see aren't being trained on how to serve us best, or healthcare, mental and sexual, and doctors, no one is trained really on how to work with us in a sufficient way. And that also goes back even to, the research that we're basing all of this off of. We have the psychologists and the clinicians and the researchers who are mainly heterosexual cis men, and they're writing this research and doing tests and studies on white guys, and they're all heterosexual and straight mostly,
Hmm.
or at least presenting that way. And that's what is the norm. That's what we expect to be good. And so when we fall outside of that, or we're, hidden and just kind of not put in the spotlight, it's not a place for us. And then that, trails down from the research to the professionals to actually serving people on the ground. And I think, hopefully with something like Glimmer, people encouraging more diversity in these fields, we can hopefully change the norms around it eventually. God knows how long it's going to take, but someday
Sure. Well,
we won't even need Glimmer. Maybe someday. That'd be awesome.
I mean, maybe someday, but I guess I'm curious. I know that you sort of just launched and are just taking over, but given everything we've seen this summer politically, given what
Mm,
you've seen as you've gotten started, and maybe some of the horror stories that you've been collecting as you go on this
mm,
journey,
mm-hmm.
do you see us going in any particular direction? Does it feel like this is going to be less of an issue 10 years from now?
Honestly, no. I mean, I can't. Maybe I'm still in the mindset of that debate from Tuesday, but it's really hard to feel positive, Like, I've
Yeah.
had a lot of therapists come on and be so confident that they're affirming, and they're not, like they'll mess up pronouns, or they'll, get the LGBTQ acronym wrong. And it's those small things where I'm like, if I were seeing you as a client, that would make me really uncomfortable. That would make me feel not safe in that space. Um, there are, on the other hand, really amazing therapists. And that's one of the cool things, is that I've seen just how cool there are, like, people out there that are doing such amazing work, that have, community outreach and activism, but also are therapists and are, educating others. And it makes me just want to lift all of them up. Like, that's my goal, is to hopefully get them more clients, so that the success rates of people of color and women and queer people in these mental health professions will go up. And then hopefully it'll encourage more people to join that field and not feel as intimidated. And, you know, for once we'll be on top. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
someday.
I would love to dive in real quick because
Yeah.
I can imagine this being a point of concern or confusion for some people who maybe aren't queer or person of color.
Hmm.
But there is, I want to dive in a little bit to what you said about messing up pronouns or getting the acronym wrong
Right.
being equated to maybe a lack of safety or a sense of distrust.
Hmm.
And yes, like, we know it's a small-ish thing on its face, right? Of course, you can
Hmm.
get people's pronouns wrong. I misgender myself
Right.
sometimes. Like, it's just going to be a thing that happens. And yes, of course, it's an acronym. You might mix up the letters, or you might, trail off towards the Q end of things because you're not sure what
Right.
comes next. But this is not us passing judgment on you as a person, right? This is a lifetime of survival instincts kind of kicking in. That can we talk a little bit about how you're seeing that interplay a little bit?
Definitely. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I mean is we all mess up. I totally get that. And it's not the acronyms or the pronouns in itself. It's almost like a persona or a confidence that comes out. And that's what I've noticed. And that's why we do the interviews or over Zoom now, I guess. But yeah, it's wanting to feel understood and heard. And if when they mess up a pronoun or something like that, correcting, apologizing, and moving on is, I think, the best way to do it, and just move forward. It's okay to make a mistake, but the problem where I feel uncomfortable, or I've seen people be uncomfortable, is when that doesn't change. When there's no movement towards improving or feeling like you need to improve. And I think that's the key, is being open to change and accepting that you might not know best, that you don't, it's a progress. And I think a lot of, especially older adults and people in general in the US, are just going through that time of unlearning a lot that, we've been taught. I was talking to a woman who was from, I don't even remember where she was from. But anyways, she was saying that she's learned so many languages, and that in some languages that she's learned, they try to strip away the gender from, when they say like he or she, it just like becomes a gender neutral kind of pronoun towards the person. And then when in English, you have to specifically say he, she, and now they. And so there's a lot of like unlearning that's being done and happening because people who maybe English isn't their first language or whatever, we're all taught to say things grammarly. God, that's so ironic that I just said grammarly when talking about grammar. But it's a process, and we're all working towards it. And I think it's just being honest and open and respecting people is the main goal.
Right. I can definitely tell when someone sees me as me, and when somebody is accommodating me and using my pronouns to not offend me, but still but they're actually a woman. It's fine. We'll pretend for me's sake. And it does change the way you interact with the other person. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
Well, and as we're talking about like flubbed words and whatever else, I think it's important to remember that while, yes, therapists are human, you're also looking to hold your therapist to a different standard than your grandma. The level of like fluency and comfort they have with these words and the safety that creates, you're looking for something specific when you're looking for a therapist. And that ability to create that safe environment is very different than the other emotional needs that you would have in a different type of relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that goes back to the difference between a friendly therapist and an affirming therapist, and your grandma can be friendly, and people who you don't need that deep emotional openness, or you need to feel comfortable around. Like, you can just put on a face and be like, hi grandma, I love you. But when you're with your therapist, you need to feel like they understand you, that they hear you, and that they are validating you, and they're affirming towards you. And I think that, yeah, like you said, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, well, we've talked about the need to be affirming and the use of language and some of these different pieces. I'm curious if anything else stands out, if we've missed any of the challenges faced by queer folks when just trying to find a therapist.
Yeah. There's a lot. I don't know. Do you have, I'm trying to think like off the top of my head.
I've got one thing that kind of intersects, and it's related. I don't know if it's necessarily the same exact thing as
question redacted, v speech initiated.
Right. But what about polyamory and the concept of talking to either a relationship counselor or just somebody you're talking to for your own benefit, and you bring up the fact that there's more than one person involved, and I've been in the position where I have said that to somebody. I was like, yeah, my partner and their partner just dropped me off here to my therapy appointment and I'm meeting up with them later and it's cool. And the look of just like very
Right.
quickly veiled shock, like
Mhm.
she recovered very quickly and it was great. But like there was that moment of like, what? Oh, out of my depth.
Like a light bulb
Okay.
goes off, yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
even not just personal orientation, but relationship styles, I'm sure is super important to consider in this as well.
Definitely, yeah. So, I mean, in our questionnaire for the clients, we keep it really short answers so they can be as open or, as I don't know, they can say as much or as little as they want when they're filling out the form to find a therapist. And so, we require all the therapists to be sex positive to some extent, and that's part of the interview process. But we also have therapists who are specifically in their, focuses and certification are either relationship coaches or like consensual non-monogamy or polyamorous, have these different experiences with clients. And they'll be able to, say that so I can match them better to someone, who doesn't have that shocked look on their face when that happens. They're like, oh, cool, So yeah, there's definitely a variety. We have, the typical mental health professional, the therapist, but, I realize that's not really best for everyone all the time. We don't want to sit in that classic licensed marriage and family counselor on a sofa, that whole thing. So we have, sex therapists, we have dating and relationship coaches, we have self-care coaches, we have a few indigenous healers, like yoga and meditation coaches, and just like a variety, because I want to make sure that, we're not just continuing that like structured, therapy that people come to know and don't really like and might not be best for everyone. So I wanted to offer more options because we know, it's not a one size fits all thing.
Well, and just organizationally, the fact that on Glimmer, I believe I'm listed as a relationship therapist, whereas on Psychology Today, I don't have the option to uncheck a box, so I'm listed as a couples therapist. I don't have the word couple anywhere on my website because I do work with a number of poly folks, and I think that kind of language matters.
Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, that's why we wanted the therapist to fill out their profiles too and not put people in these boxes. Like same with the short answer questions for the clients. We didn't want to give them pre-checked options that only we could create. We wanted people to be able to specify their own, answers to all these questions. Same with the therapists.
Mm-hmm. What additional barriers have y'all seen for people of color?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in general, it's similar for queer people where any minority isn't welcome in this space. Up till very recently, it's always been this white guy who's, hetero and cis. And, we've seen that a lot of people, A, don't feel safe in the spaces that are currently available, and B, they're not welcomed. And it just creates this weird cycle of disparities and health disparities, and then wondering why they're there and wondering why the research says certain things, wondering why there's such a small population of people of color who get degrees in psychology or masters in psychology. And it's like, it's a huge cycle that was created so long ago that needs to, like I mentioned, eventually be broken. And hopefully, we can all take these small things. Like if Glimmer helps 10 people want to become a therapist, I think, we just need to keep chugging along and changing the norm. But yeah, we've had, so on our client form, we actually have a section that says, do you have any preferences in the identity of your therapist? So that could be ethnic, cultural, gender, sexual identity, anything like that. And we let them answer it openly. So some people will say, no, I don't. Or the most common one we get is actually, I don't want someone straight. So that's always cool because very few of our therapists are straight and cis. So that's always exciting. But yeah, some people will actually say, outright, I don't want a white person. I don't want, a straight person. Or they'll say, I need someone who's Black, or I need someone who is Hispanic. And that's because, and I've talked to the therapists who have seen this too, and they don't feel from their experiences, from everything that has happened, from the norms of, white people and non-people of color, they don't feel comfortable opening up. And I talked to one of the clients and she was saying, like, I've had a white therapist before and I just feel like she didn't understand anything that I said. Like she just was in a completely different realm of where I'm at. And I totally respect that. Like, I think that's so important to be able to give them the option of having some experience or having some preference in common that they want within a therapist, because it's not just their background and, you know, everything else. It's feeling comfortable. And if that comes from finding someone that they list on the preference sheet, yeah, I think it's important. But it's interesting because we've also seen just how much both the queer community and people of color have really loved and kind of glommed onto the idea of Glimmer, because I don't think there's anything like it yet. And that, I mean, again, that's why I started it, but it just doesn't exist. And so when you finally see a space that's, you know, on our front page, we say, like, this is a space for you. You know, it's a space for a group of people that haven't had a space where they're the center of attention yet. And we're finally not on the back burner. We're here and we're queer. Oh God, I feel so cringy saying that. But, you know, like, it's exciting. You know, it's like when you see someone that looks like you in a movie, or you read a book and you relate to the character, you know, it means a lot. And to have a space where you can find a professional that, you know you'll feel comfortable around, and a space that's safe and online, it's sad that it doesn't exist yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not to be like too, specific for the audience, but I got an email from Glimmer the same day that I was like ready to get rid of Psychology Today, which would be, I imagine, y'all's biggest or only, competitor in that space. Just because this has been a summer where they've received a lot of just criticism. I am a member of Psychology Today. I read a number of their articles. A number of the people who've been on this show have been featured on that website. And I'm not looking to completely trash it, but they have a lot of really glaring flaws that have come to light this summer. And they're really the central hub for counseling in the United States.
Right. Yeah. And it's unfortunate because it's kind of like a necessary evil. And that's what I've heard from a lot of therapists, is to get clients, you have to be on Psychology Today because that's where everyone looks. But it's so like belittling to both therapists and clients. It's like when you go to like the LGBTQ section, or it's just LGBT, you go down and all the options are gay and lesbian. And I think maybe they have bisexual. And then your therapist can like specialize in that, whatever that means. And it's just bizarre. And then you go to like a therapist profile there and they specialize in like 200 things. And you're like, you cannot specialize in all of those things. That is not possible. So, that was honestly, and I hate trashing them, but I also love doing it because I think they absolutely suck. But that's another reason why I started it, because it's bizarre to me that that's the main place to go find a therapist. And I know that a lot of therapists don't like Psychology Today either. And that's, why I think we've also been successful in the therapy side, is they're looking for something else. They don't want to have to give money to this shitty place. Sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying it, to be honest. And I appreciate everything that y'all are doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a long road. It's only been 3 months.
Doubt it.
There's a long road ahead, or a longer road ahead.